Welcome to Work Life by Design. I'm your host, Mel Marsden. If the last few years have taught us anything, it's that change is inevitable and we no longer need to go to work to work. As a workplace dynamic strategist and the founder of Community, I draw back the curtains on my own business, the clients and projects that we deliver, along with tapping into the knowledge and insights from academics, business leaders and champions of change. I believe that our environments have the power to positively influence our behaviour and performance, inspiring our human potential. Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Work Life by Design. Now, as you're tuning into this episode today, we are in the thick of planning the book launch for my new book, The Next Workplace, Designing Dynamic Environments that Inspire Human Potential. Now, I'm very excited about putting this book out into the world because it has been a journey for me that has taken the last 4 years to pull this together, but it's actually a culmination of my last 20 years of working in the industry, learning, researching, all of the philosophies that I've gathered and the distillation of those down now into a book. And so when I was thinking about what I wanted the book launch to be and how we were going to hold this and host this, I started thinking about what the bigger conversation is that I wanted to have. And I've been reading Priya Parker's The Art of Gathering. And in that, she talks about what is the purpose of this gathering? What is the purpose of this meeting? Why are we bringing people together? And just as I talk about what is the purpose of our workplace and, why do we want people to come back to the workplace? What value is it going to give them? What is it contributing to their lives? She talks about this very much in the same way in terms of why do we want to bring people together for this particular gathering? And this was something that I started to think about a lot more deeply and going, well, I could have a book launch, which is typically, me getting up there, talking about this wonderful book that I've written, welcoming everybody in, having a glass of champagne to celebrate and, having a night of festivities. But I think that would actually miss a very big opportunity to start a bigger conversation. And so when I sat down and I thought about what it is that I actually wanted to achieve from this book launch, it was more about how we can start a broader conversation around the opportunity that is presented to us right now. And that's exactly the premise of the book. The premise of the book is to explain what are the opportunities that are right in front of us when we go about creating a new workplace that are often missed by many organizations. It's about explaining how we can tie those organizational goals, those strategies that we are trying to introduce into our businesses to the actual physical environment and how that can either enable or deter us from actually achieving them. So that's what I'm doing with the book launch. I'm wanting to start a bigger conversation. So what I've planned for us in each of the following cities, so we've got one happening in Brisbane, then in Melbourne, and then in Sydney, is we're going to be diving into a live case study. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to bring along some of my clients that we've been able to work with over the many years. And we're going to unpack some of the projects that we've done with them, what those challenges were when they set out on the project, what the solutions have been, what they've learned along the way, and also what impact that's had on their business now several years on. So we're going to be doing that. And then I've brought together some of our brightest in each of these locations to talk to us about what they're experiencing in their workplaces right now. What are those challenges that they're facing? What are the opportunities that they're seeing? And how is their organization starting to tackle them? What are they doing in terms of work, flexibility, remote working, the 4-day work week that's on everyone's lips at the moment? So we're going to be diving in and getting them to share their stories and their learnings, both what's worked and what hasn't worked, so that together we can all take some of this away, see what's working in other organizations, see what we can actually embrace and adopt in our own organizations, and how we can start to change this whole world of work and elevate our experience of work for everybody. So if this is a conversation that you want to be part of, please come along and join us. You can find out more details at the link at www.melissamarsden.com.au/book. And you can see what's happening in your city and you can register there. And I would love you to come along and join in on this fantastic conversation all about work, people, and place. And have a glass of champagne with me to celebrate. So I hope to see you there. But today, what I want to be talking about is what we do when we're taking an organization through this whole process of designing their next workplace. We help them enable change. Now, this is a conversation that I've been having with a number of my clients at the moment, and it's all about this is great. You're going to take us on this journey and you're going to help us guide this whole process and engage with our people. But are you then just going to design a workplace that our people want rather than actually working with what our business objectives are? I'm the one here paying the bills and I have a business to run and there's commercial realities of running this business and I have a vision for where I want to take it. But when you go through and you do all this employee engagement and you speak to our staff and they tell you all of these things that they want, who are you working for? Are you working for me as the business owner, or are you working for them as my team telling me what they want from their next workplace? And so this is a very common question that we get asked because employee engagement is a big part of the process of understanding what your next workplace is going to be about, because we want to understand what's working for your current team, what's not working, where do they see some of these opportunities, how do they go about doing their daily tasks, who do they need to talk to? What do they need to be able to do their jobs more effectively? All of that is really valuable information for us to understand so that we can then look at how we can actually create an environment that supports them in delivering on their objectives of their role and the performance measures within the business as well. So in essence, how can we make them more productive and enhance their performance for you at work as the business owner? The reality of this is that our whole role in taking your employees on this journey is to firstly understand what is the objectives that you as the business owner want to achieve. What is your vision for this project? Where do you want to take your business? Now, this could be a number of different things. You might be going through a number of mergers and acquisitions. You might be looking at changing the team up. You might be introducing new products, which is going to change the way that your teams operate. It's going to change the functions of your teams. It's even going to create new teams, which is then in turn going to create new ways of working, new patterns of behavior, new ways of communicating across those lines, new information flow. All of these things could be factors that are feeding into your whole need to create your next workplace. And so it's about understanding what those guiding principles are that you want us to then support you to achieving with your employees through this whole process. And our role is to guide your people through this process. So our whole purpose of being here is to support you, bringing in an outsider's perspective in to guide your people to a very productive outcome. Our job is to hear any valid concerns that they may have. They might bring up things that we had not even thought of, and this does happen quite a lot, is there are things that sit on the outskirts because we're not in your business. We don't know exactly what's going on in that day-to-day. Your people do. And so they're able to surface some of these things that bring another lens to the conversation, a different perspective, and something that we can then table and talk about and see how the best way forward is, all within the framework of understanding where our North Star is. What is that end goal that you as a business owner want to achieve and want us to help you get to? Enjoying the episode? I would love it if you would share this show with just one person who you think it would inspire. Just one. The more we can share the insights of what it takes to make work work, the closer we are to elevating everyone's experience of work. Another big part of that whole process is about helping you manage expectations. So even though we're going in and we're asking people for all of their feedback and trying to understand what's working and what's not and what their future ideal state looks like, our role is to also help temper some of those expectations. So it's about ensuring that your people feel listened to, that they feel heard, but it's also about then providing that feedback loop to make sure that we're closing this out. It's about going back to them and going, okay, we heard this. This is what you're thinking is happening within the organization. This is what you'd like to see. Now, this is what we're able to adopt, and this is why, and here's what we can't adopt, and this is also why. It's about supporting that whole process of change and closing out that feedback loop so that your people feel like they've been engaged with, they feel like they've been heard, they feel like they've been listened to, and that they then understand what can be implemented and what can't be due to the commercialities of the project, what's going on in the business. Sometimes there's just things happening that they don't need to know about, and it's happening at a much higher level, but it's about giving that feedback to show that we actually heard what you had to say and we've adopted what we can where we can. Now, another big part of taking your employees through this process is to show them that there is another way that's possible. Now, often we don't know what we don't know. So, if your people have been working in a particular way for a number of years, perhaps you've got a really long tenure of employees, there might be a more aging workforce, you might have people who haven't worked in many other roles before. Depending on the structure of your organization and the type of people in your business, they may not have had visibility about what's going on in other organizations, how other people are adopting remote and flexible working policies or practices, what different workplace design is looking like. So, a big part of our role is education to show them what's happening. This is how other organizations in similar industries have changed the way that they are working in their workplaces. Here's how they've changed their routines and rituals, the days they're in the office, the way that they work, the way that they've embraced technology. So our role is about to sort of lift those blinds for your people so that they can see and visualize a different way forward. It's about giving them another perspective, about giving them another language that they can then use to help guide that transformation process as we move forward. And what you might be surprised by is that when we do this, we often can see people's little blinds go bing because they're going, oh, I didn't realize that that was something that was available to me. I didn't think that that was going to be possible for us. And this is a process of really opening up things, making it much more expansive for them around what their world of work could possibly be. The other big part of what we do when we go through this process, though, is calling bullshit. Now, this happens quite a bit because people come with a perspective to protect what they've always known. Now, this isn't uncommon. This is a human 101. We all are very comfortable with what we know. We don't particularly like change. We especially don't like change when it's being forced upon us or we feel like it's being forced upon us. And so we will find any reason and any excuse why what you're proposing will not work. Now, I've had things come to me like, I need this particular piece of computer equipment. I need this many screens. It has to have this kind of processor in it. And that's why I must have a dedicated desk. If we dig into that and we ask these individuals, well, okay, so you're in the office 2 days a week. You're working from home 3 days a week. Do you have that same similar setup at home? And the surprising answer to that was no. But there was an expectation that the business would provide that for them, even though they weren't going to be in the office more than 2 days a week, and they wanted a dedicated desk that was purely owned by them. So here's an example of how, through some gentle conversation, we were able to unpack this person's perception of what they required in their workplace in the office in comparison to what they were actually doing at home. And so there's one way that we were able to actually unpack and call bullshit on that situation. The other one that I can share with you is during a workshop, we were told that there was no way that this person could work flexibly because they needed a very particular ergonomic setup. They required a very ergonomic keyboard, an ergonomic mouse. They had a very ergonomic foot stand that they had to sit at, and their desk was set up in a very, very particular way. Again, when they were questioned about when they were working at home, if they had a similar setup and if that was necessary for them at home, and the answer was no. And what it came out to be was that this person just wanted a laptop. If they were provided a laptop, then all of their concerns around flexibility and where they worked and how they worked went away. So again, this is just about how when we start to make some curious conversation and inquire about people's perceptions of what they need and where they need it, we can start to unpack some of the truth around what it is that they actually need or what it is that they're actually looking for. Now, a big part of this process of change is around what's in it for me. I need to know what is the business prepared to offer me so that I can get on board with this change and that we are all moving forward in the same direction. And so a big part of our process is around that education piece, but also really interrogating some of these perceptions that people have around how and where they work and what the tools are that they need to work to do their job. Now, I'm not discounting that some people are going to need very technical specialist computer equipment or that there are other people who do need very particular ergonomic setups. All I'm suggesting is that sometimes we need to be a little bit more curious in our questioning to find out what actually is the root cause here. Is that really the issue, or is there something else that this person is angling for and they're just using that as their crux to kind of hold on to the past? So there's many ways that we can start to do that. But at the end of the day, our whole role is to ensure that you are having a very highly successful transition to your new workplace. We want to feel like your people have been empowered. We want them to feel seen. We want them to feel listened to. We want them to feel heard. We want them to contribute to this process because they have a very in-depth knowledge of your business and what they need to do their role. But we need to unpack that and put it together in a productive way that supports the business and the individuals and the teams to actually deliver on those objectives for the business. And in essence, what we're doing here is creating new behaviors and new habits. Because if we pick up our old behaviors and our old habits and we transfer them into our new space, we're going to very quickly revert to old ways of doing things. And our space is not going to be as successful as we'd like it to be. So it doesn't matter how wonderful that space is and all the intentions that you have there about creating a fabulous new workplace. If we're not then educating our people around the new behaviors that we expect and the new habits that we need, they're going to quickly revert to those old behaviors and your workplace is not going to be as fruitful as you would hope it to be. Now, as my good friend Dr. Meg says, change is actually all about creating new patterns of behavior. And as she quotes from Susan David, culture is just behaviors expressed at scale. So what are the behaviors that we want to see our people doing in our organizations, and how can we use our workplaces to influence those behaviors, and how can we guide them through this journey to ensure that those outcomes are as fruitful for the individuals as they are for the organization? So many organizations that I embark on this process with are, as I said at the beginning, very concerned about who we're actually working for, but also how we're going to manage these expectations. And my discussion with them is the fact that just because you are fearful of what your people say is not a good enough reason not to ask them. You need to hear what is happening in that organization, what your people need, how they need to work, what's working for them and what is not working for them, so that we can then create a more successful outcome for everybody involved and for you as a business owner, because at the end of the day, your business is about creating high-performing people doing very productive in their roles so that you can then see a profit and a return on investment from your people and from your workplace. So, I hope that sheds a little bit of light on who we're actually working for, how we enable change, and what it means to call some bullshit on some of those stories that we hear people telling themselves around what it is that they need to make their workplace succeed. Now, this is just one of the topics that I cover in my book, The Next Workplace, Designing Dynamic Environments that Inspire Human Potential. And as I said at the outset of today's episode, if you are in Brisbane, Melbourne, or Sydney and would love to come and join a broader conversation around this, please do so. Those events are happening in each of those capital cities: in Brisbane on March the 22nd, in Melbourne on March the 29th, and in Sydney on April the 5th. And I'd love you to join me in this bigger conversation around what it's going to take to elevate our whole experience of work. I look forward to seeing you there.